Is tinnitus caused by a migraine? There's been a lot of interesting research on this subject, and the other day I listened to a lecture by a doctor whose name I'm going to mispronounce, Hamid Djalian, D-J-A-L-I-L-I-A-N, who's developed a treatment that's done by a company called Care that essentially utilizes this theory to treat tinnitus. Now, it doesn't treat all tinnitus. It's primarily going to work with fluctuating tinnitus, intermittent tinnitus, tinnitus where there's a change in the baseline, and somatic tinnitus. But since my tinnitus is fluctuating, changes from fairly slow, low, quiet to extremely loud, I was very interested in the lecture and the research, which seemed promising. And I'm not here to go over that or explain it because I'll give you links in the notes to this session so you can check it out yourself rather than having me explain it. But I do want to talk about a way I think you can hack this treatment if this applies to you and save yourself thousands of dollars that the Care is going to cost you if if you're in this basket of treatments, a basket of symptoms that it might work for. So here goes. So there's two components to this Care treatment, and there's a medication component and a behavioral component. Now, the medication component is taking a couple of drugs that have been shown to be effective with migraines. And I should say this is a migraine for an ear migraine, and that these medications have been shown to be effective. And hacking this essentially would involve finding out those medications by reading the research, and again I'll put some links, and you'd have to talk to your own doctor about getting him or her to prescribe this medication. And that's something I'm not going to talk about today, but I'm going to talk about the behavioral component, which seems the larger component of the treatment, and something you could do for really nothing or next to nothing, at least low cost, much less than Care is going to charge you. And so the behavioral component consists in really tracking, determining how your tinnitus is impacted by primarily stress, sleep, and diet, and then engaging in behaviors to address those issues. Now, the key to finding how your tinnitus is affected by these factors was actually laid out decades ago in this kind of classic book. I think it is the first book by a psychologist about tinnitus called Tinnitus: Living with the Ringing in Your Ears by Richard Hallam, Hallam. And in that book, Dr. Hallam goes over a method called the Tinnitus Diary. And what the Tinnitus Diary is essentially tracking your tinnitus across time and in relation to a particular factor. I'll read some of Dr. Hallam's comments on this. The Tinnitus Diary will help you to discover what makes tinnitus more or less severe on a day-to-day basis. For you, to be severe might simply mean to be loud. In fact, with a little careful observation, you should be able to distinguish the loudness of the noises from how noticeable, annoying, or distressing they are. Even if the loudness of your noises seem constant, the effects of your tinnitus will certainly vary in some way from day to day. So essentially, as you track two things, the loudness and the annoyance factor, he has you work on a scale of 1 to 7. 1 for loudness being extremely quiet, you can barely hear it, and 7, it's as loud as your tinnitus has ever been. And for annoyance, he has you track 1, not at all annoying, and 7, as annoying as your tinnitus has ever been. And so how do you track these? Well, he recommends tracking at either preset times during the day, but essentially the best strategy is to pick kind of a morning, afternoon, and evening to give yourself an overall sense of how the sound is at those particular periods, and then to determine what, if anything, can be related to the change in the either loudness or annoyance. Now, with this, again, neuromed care factor, you're primarily dealing with cases where the actual loudness varies, and as I said, which is my case. And so tracking that to determine what factors might be relevant in the change. And so one of the things you might do, and I would suggest, is especially, and this comes from a very similar method that's done by Vinmalia Birch in working with chronic pain, and that is to check both the pain level and the stress level. And you could also do this, you could do this for, again, given the 3 factors, you might want to do this separately for the sleep, loudness and sleep, and then loudness and diet to check this. And seeing over time what conclusions you can draw from this. As he points out, keeping the diary might have the undesirable effect of increasing your awareness of the noises. And this is a real concern, and probably I think maybe this is something not to undertake until you are somewhat settled in your tinnitus, some level of habituation. This might happen if you are assessing noises very frequently. For this reason, I suggest that a diary is kept for an experimental period and for a particular purpose only. And so I think this works really well with, again, this neuromed care, determining sleep, stress, and diet. And once you have those, which are, if I'm not mistaken in this, understanding this program, those factors keyed in, the changes essentially are reducing stress, which we all need to do, especially with tinnitus, changing diet and getting your sleep in a healthier mode. And nothing that they're proposing isn't something you could pull off on your own, or again, relatively much more cheaply. Stress being, as the doctor admitted, the biggest factor. And here you have, as I've talked about often, mindfulness-based stress reduction, the most effective tool we have as therapists in the behavioral health field for reducing stress. And there is a free version of this program at the website Palouse Mindfulness, and I'll put that in the notes as well. And you can work yourself as a stress reducing tool. And with sleep as well, there are a lot of apps out there to help you to work with your sleep, educate yourself about sleep, and engage in your own changes in sleep and diet. So, I've begun to track my own tinnitus in this way in terms of loudness, because I've known it's changed, but it's been interesting to observe it with a little more consistency. And I've already seen over the course of 5-6 days that it tends to, if it starts loud, it stays loud. And again, what factors determine that? There is some stress I've been able to pinpoint, but of course correlation is not causation. Working at ways to reduce stress in particular situations is one of the things I'm going to check and track to see how this works out. Now this neuromed care thing is supposedly, again, look at the research they present, that's getting a lot of effective outcomes. And again, fluctuating tinnitus, intermittent tinnitus. Tinnitus was a change in baseline or a somatic tinnitus. And it's not about getting rid of the tinnitus, it's about bringing it down to its baseline level. And that's something I'm very interested in, why this line of work appealed to me, and why I am going to both, try this behavioral stuff and then try to look at the research in terms of what drugs are using and talk to my own doctor about this. See if he could, even though there aren't a lot of doctors who understand this research, if you can, I think, present it to them, show them the research. Someone who's open-minded might be willing to prescribe along these lines. So that's it. I think it's worth checking out. If you fall into the work, you can check the website for Neuromed Care to see their program. But once you look at it, I think you'll see it's these two components that you can essentially hack your own way through these. So good luck with that. If you have any results or questions, let me know. Bye.